Rain hammered down on Dallas that evening, turning the cracked sidewalks into rivers of mud and neon reflections. Beneath a flickering street lamp sat 17-year-old Jasmine Carter, her bony shoulders trembling against the cold iron shutter of an abandoned donut shop. The cardboard shed wedged above her head sagged with rain, leaking icy water onto her tangled hair. On good nights, Jasmine would lie awake, imagining those raindrops were stars scattered across a dark Texas sky. But tonight, there was no starlight, only the smothering blackness of her reality. 3 months earlier, she'd stood graveside, clutching her father's worn work boots to her chest as earth thudded onto his casket. The only family she had left was her stepmother, Darlene, whose mascara ran down her cheeks that day in dramatic streaks. But within an hour, Darlene's tearful act curdled into disgust. "You should have gone with him, witch," she spat, before throwing Jasmine's duffel bag onto the porch. Since then, Jasmine had drifted through Dallas like a silent shadow, surviving off half-eaten hot dogs tossed her way, and tiny bottles of water begged from gas station clerks. Each dawn was another battle, just to breathe each dusk, another scramble for shelter before the drunks claimed every hidden corner. She felt herself shrinking into invisibility, wondering if the world would notice if she simply disappeared. But deep inside her frail chest flickered a single, stubborn hope, one that even the darkest Texas night couldn't snuff out. The next morning, Jasmine woke before dawn to the chill seeping through her soaked jeans. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but she forced herself upright, brushing the rain from her eyelashes. The early commuters hadn't filled the streets yet, and the city's silence felt almost sacred. She wandered toward the sprawling downtown convention center, where a massive business expo was underway, hundreds of vendors, food trucks, and hopeful workers crowding its concrete courtyard. As Jasmine approached, she could almost taste the promise floating in the hot morning air, sizzling bacon from breakfast burritos, cinnamon rolls drenched in icing, and freshly brewed coffee that made her chest ache with longing. With blistered feet slipping in her torn sneakers, she weaved between clusters of people listening for opportunity. Rumors buzzed around her like flies. A smoothie vendor needed cashiers. A promotional booth was paying hourly for leaflet distributors. If desperation has a taste, its possibility, she thought, lips dry and cracked as she swallowed the pain in her belly. But each time she approached a stall, whether it was to wash dishes, wipe tables, or help load boxes, the answer was the same. "Look at you, honey," one man said, glancing at her mud-streaked jeans and tangled hair. "My customers want like this." At a food truck, the chef shook his head, pointing to a laminated sign. Food handler's permit required no exceptions. By the 15th rejection, Jasmine's chest felt hollow. Each no pounded nails deeper into her hope. As the sun climbed higher, burning her scalp through her thin hoodie, she whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow." She turned to leave, weaving past towers of empty crates stacked near the exit gate. But then her foot nudged something soft yet heavy on the damp concrete. Looking down, her heart skipped a beat. There, face down in a puddle, lay a sleek black leather wallet bulging at the seams, as if it held the promise of an entirely new life. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat as she crouched on the cold pavement, her trembling fingers closing around the smooth, buttery leather. She turned the wallet over and gently unzipped it, half expecting nothing but soggy receipts or an expired driver's license. But instead, 30 crisp $100 bills stared back at her, lined up perfectly, like soldiers standing at attention. Her pulse roared in her ears. She could already see Eaton apartment with a real mattress instead of cardboard, her own padlock on the door to keep her safe at night, a second-hand sewing machine humming by the window as she rebuilt her life stitch by stitch. She clutched the wallet to her chest, feeling its weight against her ribs as if it might burrow into her heart, and fill the hollow spaces left by hunger and grief. As she shifted her grip, a laminated photo ID card slipped free and fluttered to the wet ground. She snatched it up before the breeze could carry it away. A stern yet handsome face stared back at her mid-40s salt and pepper hair, at the temple's eyes confident in a way that told her this man owned entire skyscrapers downtown. The caption read, "Mr. Charles Whitman, CEO, Whitman Global Holdings." Below that was an embossed address in Highland Park and a private phone number. Jasmine's heart hammered with conflicting truths. This money 3,000 was a fortune to her enough to rent a small studio for 2 years, buy fabric to launch her tailoring dream, and eat real meals every day. No one would ever know. Everyone on these streets lived off scraps the rich dropped without even noticing. But then, as thunder rumbled low over the city, a memory of her mother's voice whispered inside her. Stealing buys comfort, but it robs your soul of peace forever. Jasmine closed her eyes against the tears threatening to spill, clutching the wallet tighter as rain dripped down her cheeks like silent prayers. Her stomach growled in protest, but something deeper inside her refused to let go of her dignity. Slowly, she tucked the wallet under her hoodie and rose, staring out into the morning traffic, with a single unbreakable resolve forming within her: she would return it, no matter what it cost. The morning drizzle turned into a steady rain as Jasmine pulled her hoodie tighter around her face and stepped onto the bustling Dallas sidewalk. Returning the wallet was not going to be easy. The address on Mr. Whitman's ID card was across the city in Highland Park, a world away from the cracked sidewalks and graffiti-stained underpasses she called home. She checked her pockets, a crumpled $5 bill and a handful of pennies. Bus fare alone would swallow that and still leave her miles short. "Ill walk," she whispered to herself, ignoring the ache blooming in her blistered heels. Each step felt like a small rebellion against the voice inside that told her to keep the money and save herself. She stopped by a gas station to ask an older man filling his truck for directions. "Sir," she said softly, "do you know how far Highland Park is from here?" He looked her up and down, taking in her soaked jeans, torn shoes, and shivering frame. "What you need up there, little girl?" he asked, not unkindly. Jasmine swallowed hard. "I found something. I just need to return it to the owner." The man scoffed and shook his head, wiping his hands on a rag. "If God blessed you with something, maybe you ought to keep it. Folks up there got enough. Ain't nobody gonna thank you for being honest." His words stung, but Jasmine simply nodded and thanked him, continuing on her way with her shoulders hunched against the rain. With each block, her resolve battled exhaustion and doubt. Her stomach gnawed at her insides, reminding her it had been nearly 2 days since her last meal, a bruised banana, salvaged from a dumpster behind a grocery store. But she forced herself forward, weaving through morning commuters and weaving through memories of her mother's whispered blessings over dinner tables that barely fed them. "Do what's right, even when it hurts," her mother would say with tired eyes and calloused hands. Jasmine pressed on, clutching the wallet to her chest like it was a promise she refused to break, even if it meant collapsing on the highway before she ever reached that mansion's towering gates. By late afternoon, Jasmine's legs burned with every step. The Dallas skyline behind her shrank into a blue-gray haze as she crossed bridges and weaved between roaring highway ramps. Her thin sneakers had split open at the toes, letting in the gritty rainwater that soaked her socks and left her skin raw. At one intersection, she paused to catch her breath, leaning against a metal light pole. Traffic surged around her in waves of blaring horns and exhaust fumes. She glanced down at the wallet hidden under her hoodie, feeling its weight pressing against her ribs like an urgent reminder of why she couldn't turn back. Desperation clawed at her resolve as her vision blurred from hunger and exhaustion. She ducked into a corner store to ask for help, approaching the cashier with her voice trembling. "Please, ma'am, I just need a few dollars for the bus to Highland Park. I found something valuable, and I need to return it." The woman, older and heavy-set, with tired eyes behind thick glasses, frowned in suspicion. "What did you find?" Jasmine hesitated. "A wallet," she whispered. The woman's gaze sharpened, flicking to Jasmine's soaked clothes and tangled hair. With money, Jasmine nodded silently, her fingers tightening around the wallet. The woman snorted. "Child, don't be a fool. Keep it and feed yourself. Ain't nobody gonna thank you for giving back what they want, miss." Humiliation burned hot under Jasmine's skin as she stepped back into the rain. Her stomach twisted in agony, but the thought of keeping the wallet felt like swallowing poison. She continued walking, head bowed against the cold drizzle, as dusk fell over the city. Each passing mile felt heavier, her steps slower, the sidewalk tilting and shimmering under her weary gaze. But she kept whispering to herself a prayer disguised as determination. "I won't lose who I am. I won't lose who I am." And with that quiet vow echoing in her chest, she pressed on toward the golden lights of Highland Park, unaware of how close she was to a moment that would change her life forever. The sun had long disappeared behind towering office buildings by the time Jasmine reached Highland Park. Street lamps cast golden halos onto the immaculate sidewalks, lined with manicured hedges and stone fountains that burbled softly under the night sky. She stopped for a moment, breath ragged, staring at the elegant homes that seemed to glow from within like entire worlds lit up in warmth and safety, worlds shed only ever glimpsed from the bus window. Her legs trembled as she approached a black iron gate crowned with golden initials CW for Charles Whitman. A polished brass intercom blinked under a security camera, its unblinking red eye fixed on her. For several minutes, Jasmine simply stood there, clutching the wallet to her chest, terrified that if she spoke, her voice would break. Finally, with her heart thudding so hard it made her ears ring, she pressed the buzzer. A robotic voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes." Jasmine swallowed, her mouth dry as bone. I need to speak to Mr. Whitman," she whispered. "And who are you?" came the curt reply. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "My name is Jasmine Carter. I found something that belongs to him. Please, it's important." Silence pressed against her chest until the gate creaked open, just enough for two uniformed guards to step out. Their eyes raked over her muddy clothes and tangled hair, narrowing with thinly veiled disgust. "What's this about?" one asked sharply. Jasmine trembled, but didn't step back. She pulled the wallet from under her hoodie, holding it out with shaking hands. "Please, I need to give it to him myself." They laughed, a short, cold sound that sliced through her already raw spirit. "Mr. Whitman doesn't meet with people like you," the taller guard sneered, grabbing for the wallet. Jasmine jerked it away instinctively, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, just tell him I'm here! Please!" But the guards turned their backs and slammed the gate shut, leaving her alone in the cool night air. She slid down onto the sidewalk, clutching the wallet to her chest, her tears soaking into the fabric of her hoodie as she whispered, "Please, let me do the right thing to a world that seemed determined not to hear her." Jasmine didn't know how long she sat curled against the wrought iron gate, her knees pulled tight to her chest, as the night deepened around her. The glow of mansion windows blurred through her tears, and every passing luxury SUV seemed to cast a spotlight on her exhaustion and shame. Her stomach ached with emptiness. Her blistered feet throbbed with each small shift of weight, but she refused to move. She had come too far to walk away now. As dawn crept in, painting the street in pale pink and gold, the grand gates finally rumbled open. A sleek black Cadillac rolled forward tires, whispering against the brick driveway. Jasmine rose shakily to her feet, wiping her eyes with trembling fingers. She stepped forward into the driveway's path, her thin frame casting a frail shadow across the polished hood. The driver slammed the brakes, and the guards rushed out again, shouting, "Get out of the way, girl! Are you crazy?" But she stood firm, her voice shaking as she called out, "Please, please, just let me give this back." The passenger door swung open, and out stepped Charles Whitman himself, wearing a crisp gray suit and polished leather shoes that gleamed under the morning sun. He paused, his brow furrowing, as he took in the sight of the soaked, shaking teenager, clutching his wallet to her chest, like it was her last lifeline. Jasmine's lips trembled as she held it out to him with both hands. "Sir, this belongs to you." "This belongs—" For a moment he simply stared at her, the bustling world around them falling silent. Then he stepped forward gently, taking the wallet from her grasp. His eyes flicked over the bills still perfectly folded inside before returning to her gaunt, tear-streaked face. Around them, the guards stood frozen, the engine idling quietly in the driveway. Jasmine swayed where she stood, her knees buckling from fatigue and relief as tears rolled down her cheeks in silent rivers. In that moment, Charles Whitman saw not just a homeless girl, but a soul that refused to let hardship steal her dignity, and for reasons he couldn't yet name. His heart clenched with a sudden, unfamiliar shame. The guards hovered, shifting uncomfortably, as Mr. Whitman turned the wallet over in his hands, inspecting its contents with quiet precision. Every bill was there, every card untouched, even the emergency contact note tucked behind the final fold. He looked back at Jasmine, seeing her more clearly under the growing dawn light, her tangled hair clinging to her damp cheeks, her sneakers split at the toes, revealing raw, swollen skin, her oversized hoodie clinging to her thin shoulders like a final shield. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his voice, smooth, yet edged with curiosity, broke the heavy silence. "You walked all this way to return it?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. Jasmine swallowed hard, her throat burning as she nodded. "Yes, sir, I didn't have bus money, but I needed to bring it back. It wasn't mine." Her words were barely more than a whisper, yet they carried the unbreakable strength of someone who had sacrificed everything except her integrity. The early morning breeze rustled the oak trees lining the mansion's driveway, carrying her quiet confession into the warm Texas air. Mr. Whitman glanced at his driver, then back at Jasmine. The guards exchanged uneasy looks, their earlier arrogance evaporating under the gravity of the moment. "Come inside," he said finally, his voice lower and gentler than before. Jasmine blinked, uncomprehending. "Sir?" She whispered, her legs trembling so violently she thought she might collapse right there on the sunlit bricks. "Come inside," he repeated firmly. "You've earned a meal, a seat, and a rest before anything else." As the guards stepped aside, Jasmine followed him through the gates she'd spent a lifetime believing were impenetrable. The morning sun gleamed off the mansion's marble columns and manicured lawns, blinding her with its brilliance. But what nearly broke her to tears was not the beauty, nor the wealth. It was the simple sound of his words echoing in her weary heart. "You've earned it." For the first time in her 17 years, she felt like she was stepping toward a future that wasn't dictated by desperation or survival alone, but by her unbreakable choice to remain honest, even when the world offered no mercy in return. Jasmine followed Mr. Whitman into the mansion's grand foyer, her sneakers squeaking softly against the gleaming marble floors. The chandelier above glowed like a constellation, casting warm golden light across the polished wood paneling and ornate staircases that curved into silent, distant halls. She felt smaller than she ever had sleeping beneath underpasses or curled up beside dumpsters, but there was something grounding about the weight of the wallet no longer pressed against her chest. As she stood there, shivering, dripping water onto his pristine floor, a middle-aged housekeeper appeared, eyes widening at the sight of Jasmine's torn jeans and mud-streaked hoodie. "Take her upstairs," McWhitman instructed gently but firmly. "She needs a bath and a change of clothes, and make sure she eats something real." The housekeeper hesitated for a brief moment, her eyes darting to Mr. Whitman's face, before nodding quickly. "Yes, sir." Jasmine blinked up at him, tears stinging her eyes again, but she forced them back with the same stubborn dignity that had carried her across the city. "Thank you, sir," she whispered hoarsely. He nodded once, meeting her gaze with an expression she couldn't decipher, something like regret or admiration. As the housekeeper led her up the grand staircase, Jasmine's legs nearly gave way beneath her. Each step felt like climbing out of a deep well she had been trapped in her entire life. When they reached a guest suite, the housekeeper ushered her inside. Jasmine stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the sheer size of the room, bigger than any shelter she had ever slept in. A massive bed sat under tall windows draped with soft linen curtains. A tray of steaming food waited on a small table: eggs, buttered toast, and fresh orange juice. She stared at it, unable to move. The housekeeper touched her arm gently. "Go on, sweetheart. This is for you." For a moment, Jasmine thought her knees would buckle under the weight of gratitude. She didn't know what Mr. Whitman intended beyond this act of kindness, but for now, as she sank onto the edge of the plush bed with trembling hands reaching for her first warm meal in days, all she felt was the profound aching relief of being seen, not as a homeless girl begging for scraps, but as a human being worthy of dignity and care. After her bath, Jasmine sat wrapped in a thick white robe, her damp hair combed back by the housekeeper into soft braids. The steam from her shower still clung to her skin, bringing a warmth she hadn't felt in years. When she stepped back into the guest suite, the sun had fully risen, illuminating the cream-colored walls and polished oak furniture in gentle morning light. The housekeeper handed her a simple lavender cotton dress. "It's yours to keep, honey," she said softly. Jasmine's hands trembled as she pulled the fabric over her shoulders, feeling its softness hug her thin frame. She looked in the mirror and hardly recognized the girl staring back, her skin clean, her hair neat, her eyes clearer than they'd been since her father's funeral. Moments later, there was a quiet knock at the door. She turned as Mr. Whitman entered, now wearing a crisp navy suit. He studied her with those same intense eyes, but today they seemed gentler. "Come with me," he said. They walked down a silent corridor lined with oil paintings and sunlit windows, finally entering his study room of dark wood bookshelves, framed diplomas, and a panoramic view of the city skyline glittering in the distance. He gestured to a plush leather chair across from his desk. Jasmine sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap to stop their trembling. For a moment he said nothing, simply looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then he spoke, his voice calm but weighted. "You could have kept the money he began. No one would have found out. Most people wouldn't have blamed you, but you didn't." Jasmine swallowed, her throat tightening. "My mama used to say," she whispered, her voice breaking, "doing right is hard, but living wrong is harder." Tears pricked her eyes, but she held his gaze bravely. Mr. Whitman leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply as if her words had cut through something heavy inside him. "Jasmine," he said, his tone softer than before, "because you chose honesty over desperation, today is going to be the day your life changes forever." Outside, the morning breeze rustled the magnolia trees beyond his window, carrying away the last whispers of darkness from her long and lonely night. Mr. Whitman rose from his chair and walked to a tall mahogany cabinet, pulling out a slim white envelope embossed with gold. He returned and set it gently in front of Jasmine. Her fingers hesitated before reaching out to open it, revealing a cashier's check with more zeros than she had ever dreamed possible. Her eyes widened, and her lips trembled as she looked up at him, tears blurring the words on the paper. "Sir, I can't take this," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. But he shook his head firmly, his expression resolute yet warm. "You can, and you will. Because this isn't charity, Jasmine. It's an investment in someone who proved that character is worth more than wealth." Outside, the morning sun rose higher over Dallas, illuminating the streets she once slept on, and the bridges she crossed with bleeding feet. For the first time in her life, Jasmine Carter felt the warmth of hope seep into her bones, washing away the chill of poverty and despair. She pressed the envelope to her chest, silently vowing to use this blessing to build a life her late mother would be proud of. True wealth isn't measured by what you keep, but by what you give back to the world. Jasmine's story reminds us that no matter how dire life becomes, integrity will always open doors that money never can. Kindness, honesty, and courage in the face of hardship are the richest treasures any human being can possess. If Jasmine's journey moved your heart today, please let us know in the comments below. Have you ever faced a choice between desperation and integrity? We read every story you share. And if you believe the world needs more stories that restore faith in humanity, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful reminder that goodness still exists even in the darkest times.